people who are using interpreters. So I'll give instructions. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Buenas tardes. Welcome. I want to start with a quick test for the people who are using English to Spanish interpretation. Vamos a hacer una prueba para la gente que usa interpretación del inglés al español. Si ustedes podrían poner sus audífonos y averiguar que pueden oír bien. I'm asking people to put their headphones on and see if they can hear well. We are so delighted that there is such a thing as simultaneous interpretation, because it really brings us all together. So now, I want to introduce you to the chairman of this wonderful committee, Lou Dalton.
Thank you. Before I start, I'd like to ask that each of you silence your cell phones if you haven't already, just kind of a reminder.
Okay, we need to be closer to the mic.
Is this better?
Did you pull the mark towards you?
No. Is this better? Okay, thank you for telling me that. So if you haven't silenced your cell phones, this would be a good time to do that. Welcome, everyone. We are so happy to see you here. Before we get started, I would like to thank Union Presbyterian Church and Reverend Stacy, there she is, for their warm embrace of our immigrant community and support for Dando Una Mano, who is sponsoring this event. Dando's mission is to create and promote an inclusive environment through outreach, education, and celebrations, removing barriers and supporting diversity, where all are welcomed, respected, treated equitably, and valued within the community. You can become a member or follower of Dando for free and join our email list. You can also follow us on Facebook. We have contact information as well as other community resources available at the resource table in the lobby. Our program tonight is divided into 3 parts, each lasting about 30 minutes, followed by a question and answer period. If you have a question, there are notepads located in your pews, and you can write that question following each segment. Just raise your hand and someone will pick up that question. You can use the pencils that are in the pews. After the Q&A period, refreshments will be offered in Fellowship Hall for continued conversation. I would like to thank each of our speakers for generously sharing their time, expertise, and experiences. I first thought of this program, well, a long time ago, but brought it to the Dando president and treasurer in October. And my ideas mirrored theirs exactly. So the program kind of fell into place naturally. I felt that if I don't know much about immigration, my guess is that lots of us don't know that much either, and it's time that we get educated. Our first speaker tonight is Dr. Mike Jacobs, a UW-Platteville history professor. He earned his PhD from Marquette University in 2001 and has been working with the UW system since 1996. His principal research interests focus on American intolerance movements, especially white supremacy, nativism, and anti-Catholicism. Mike?
Don't clap yet. You don't know what I'm going to say. So a few things I'm going to start with. I want to thank the sponsors here that generously promoted this. I'm not sure if this would happen without them, and I want to assure you that they have no idea what I'm going to say. So they're not endorsing this, but they, trust what this organization is doing and trust that they're promoting a dialogue, so I hope you consider that about the sponsors. And of course, I want to thank our organizers. I know specifically Lou and Lisa, and I'm sure a lot of other people that I was not introduced to. And also I'll say that they didn't know what I was going to say beforehand. So if you have troubles with things I say, contact me. And a better professor would have remembered to bring his business cards and not left them on the kitchen table before he left, okay? But Lou and Lisa both have my contact information, and you can get that. So with that, I'll also say that everything that I'm doing here, you have access to. I'm fine with sharing that in any way. And I think Lisa said there's a link on the back of the page, so you can get that. So some of my colleagues in the UW system recently have been a little reticent about being recorded because they fear that things they say are going to be taken out of context and used to promote ideas that they don't represent or used against them. I don't care. I'm not going to say anything to you that I wouldn't say in front of anybody else. So that's the way it's going to be. Okay? All right, with that, I want to start by saying that we have this idea. So I was asked to give kind of a history of immigration, and what I've actually gone a little bit off the rails to do is give kind of a history of our attitudes in America towards immigration. And I know that a lot of times we think there's people who are pro-immigration and anti-immigration. And I'm going to tell you, it's not a binary. It's not like you're a Bears fan or a Packers fan. There's a lot of room in the middle, and that's, quite frankly, where most of us are, okay? But some of the images I'm going to be showing you are people who are not in the middle, okay? And maybe that'll displease you, maybe it'll upset you, and if it does, I'm glad, because it should. Because we're here to talk about things that are otherwise not always talked about in polite conversation, okay? But again, everything I'm saying is Mike Jacobs speaking. It's no one else. It's not the sponsors, not the organizers, not Platteville, okay? So I want to start by saying that unless you're a ho-chunk, all of us are either immigrants or the progeny of immigrants. That's a fact, okay? And indeed, our country is a country of immigrants, and we have, and our forebears have built this country to what it is. We have, for almost 200 years now, really highlighted the fact that we are a welcoming people, that we want people to come to America. You're tired, huddled masses, yearning to be free, etc., the Statue of Liberty. And this cartoon predates the Statue of Liberty. And it says a lot of the values that we hold. I know some people are strained to see it. So no oppressive taxes, no expensive kings, no compulsory military service, no dungeons. We like to create this narrative that this is who we are. And for much of our history, we have been that. This is more recent. Still the 19th century, by the way. And oh, by the way, all the slides, if you get access to these, all the slides have the dates from when these various images were created, okay? This is late 19th century. This is, as you can see, the modern Moses is Uncle Sam, parting the sea so people can come to America, and you can see a wide variety of different people who are coming to America. And of course, we have the image of the Statue of Liberty. This is before the United States was involved in World War II, 1941, but we were supplying, I'll loosely call it the good guys. There's no disputing that here, is there? I hope not. Okay, we were supplying the good guys before we got in the war. As you can see, the Statue of Liberty here is welcoming these people from all these other places. The Statue of Liberty is, to me, when studying immigration, is a really interesting image to utilize because it really is about welcoming, even though that's not what its original intent was. Its original intent, if you didn't know, was about ending the bonds of slavery, but that's another story. But it's been manipulated. Like this, from the early 1910s, where you're seeing an evil Catholic bishop has supplanted the Statue of Liberty because there was fear of these kinds of people coming to America in that time. And even before that, about 30 years before that, is this one of Chinese coming to America. But as you know, or maybe you don't know, in 1882 we passed the Chinese Exclusion Act. It said no more Chinese except a small fraction. Then 1892 we renewed it for 10 years. In 1902 we said, why do we keep doing this every 10 years? Let's make it permanent. And it stayed permanent until World War II when they were our allies. It was rather embarrassing that we wouldn't let our allies come to our country. So my purpose here again is to show you that the issues that are hot button issues today are not new to us. They have been with us for a long time. Now, if you're not familiar with what the Great Replacement Theory is, Great Replacement Theory says that there is this diabolical plan to replace white people in America, specifically white Protestants in particular, with others, to import them, outpopulate, etc. Okay? But again, that's not new. This is from 1921, and if you can see, it says, "The last American in captivity." And you probably can't read this, but the first line says, in 1975. So that's what, in 1975, there will be no Americans left. So this, quote, Great Replacement Theory has been with us, well, that'd be about over 100 years now, isn't it? And even before that, this one's called The Last Yankee. As you can see, the diverse people standing around him, this is from the 1880s. So we'd only been a country for 100 years. There were already people saying, oh my gosh, look at whoever we are is going to change. Here you can see Uncle Sam being gobbled up by the Irish. If you didn't know, in the 19th century, this was a typical depiction of Irish on the left. From the Irish coming east, going west, and the Chinese coming east, swallowing up Uncle Sam. This has been not unpopular in the 21st century, this idea that America, particularly the western part of America, is going to become overrun with Hispanics. But this isn't new to the 21st century. We've had this for some time. This really took off in 1982 when the peso lost all its value. That's when we started seeing a lot of large-scale immigration and these types of concerns. Again, not new. And this was 100 years ago, the same thing, 1924, saying, look what's happened. People are going to be taking over America. It's not going to be us, whoever us is. The melting pot is a narrative that I learned as a kid. I don't know if any of you, can you raise your hand if you were taught the melting pot as a kid? Almost all of you. Oh my goodness, okay. All right, wow. So just so you know, not very many historians subscribe to the melting pot idea any longer, okay? But it's a valid part of our history. So it says we're overflowing. The melting pot can't work. Well, they said that in 1924 as well. And this one is from, I can see it, 1889. Now this one is, you can see the citizens are all being stirred except one. He's Irish. He doesn't fit. He's not like us. You know, it's kind of curious that I started with this question about the, quote, Mexican invasion. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but there are 6 times more Irish people in America than there are in Ireland. And I don't hear anybody complaining about that. So the idea that people cannot, quote, assimilate, cannot acculturate, I don't know. Seems to me that a lot of things are adopted. Now, I should pause here and say something about my own background. So, you know my positionality. So, one side of my family, I don't know how long they've been here. I'm not really terribly interested in genealogy, but I did see them on the 1850 census in Indiana, where I'm from. So I know that side's been there that long. The other side of my family, I'm third generation. My grandparents came from Poland, didn't learn English. My mother could speak it, couldn't read it. How much Polish do you think I got? I got a couple recipes. I can make klatschkis, but I make my wife make them, and she's Korean. She's second generation. So I just want to know where I'm coming from. So, and the idea that people, here you see some Afghan, 3 generations of Afghan women doing the Macarena. So the idea that the melting pot can't work is humbug. There's some people we just don't want in this country. That's what the Pied Piper is saying here. This one's almost 200 years old. As you can see, the people coming from the sewers. You can't really see it in this particular image, but if you look on the left-hand side, you see America. I think it's the Statue of Liberty you see there. I said 200. It's 100 years old. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Oh, it's all those Irish coming. It's all those poor people without resources. That's always who's come to America. Because it's a land of opportunity. People who don't want immigration, I don't know if that's any of you here, so be it, that's fine. The solutions are not things like walls. The solutions are a serious downturn in our economy. That's what will make people stop coming. The one time in our history we had more out-migration than in-migration was during the Great Depression. Okay, so you want to downturn our economy if you don't like immigrants. I'll let you read the bottom of this for yourself. Or maybe I'll read it. Maybe it's not. The Irishman in America is a nuisance. His son a curse. They never assimilate. The second generation simply shows an intensification of all the bad qualities of the first. They are a burden and a misery to this country. I haven't heard anyone say that about anybody Irish in how long? Ever in your lifetime? And as you note, all these people have different identifications on this boat, and it's only the Irishman who's causing problems. Here's Columbia. Before we had Statue of Liberty, we had Lady Columbia. She was our female patriotic symbol. And she's telling halt, law and order, saying halt, no more. Because if you can see in the background, the people are coming from the sewers of Russia, Italy, and Germany. We don't want these undesirables. And then more recent, this is 20th century, the scum immigrant line. So again, these are not new things. These are tropes that have been with us for a very long time. It says, ungrateful scum, vicious aliens. Uncle Sam's trying to push them away. All right, let's think about viciousness. This became popular in the 21st century. Some arguing this was the cause of 9/11, that we allowed such people. It's an elephant in the room that we're not talking about. And there is a caricature of Osama bin Laden saying, oh, my student visa was accepted. So this is the idea that we're not doing enough to stop bad people from coming to America. Again, it's not new. 1920. I think this is 1914, if I remember. It's on my notes. But this one's interesting to me because it says, come unto thee the oppressed is what Statue of Liberty says. But as you can see, this European anarchist is there with a dagger and a bomb about to blow things up. It's from the Memphis commercial. I took a look, and the Memphis, Tennessee, in the census of 1920, had an immigrant population of 3%. Is that something they really need to worry about there? By the way, of the 50 largest American cities, they ranked 47th. It tells me that such thoughts are really unreasonable. And even, notice the turban on this person, 1910. So this trope about people who are different, again, is not new. But I like the immigrant response. We don't blow up towers, we build them. And that is the truth, right? Isn't that the truth with all of us in here and our family members and the people who came before us? We're builders. It's why people want to come to America. A recent trope is about illegals voting. You see that bottom one is actually kind of funny. I thought, stop illegals from voting, sign the petition. What is you signing a petition going to do? You know what it's going to do? It's going to get you on a mailing list. That's why it's there. But again, this idea that foreigners are voting when they shouldn't be, as you can see, the people lined up are partially in their historic gear and then partially in their American clothes, as Uncle Sam watches. Or an even better one, German beer and Irish whiskey carrying away the ballot box. This one's from the 1850s. So again, I keep repeating myself, but this is all nothing new. All right, speak English. This is one that, as I mentioned, this is going to happen to people as they live here, if not the first generation, the second, the third. It happens. Whether it's by design or not, it's going to happen. Okay? I'm not sure why there's such anxiety about it, but there is. So I mentioned about my wife, who's second generation Korean. Her father, her late father, would be very upset if he called a customer service line and he had to push 1 if he wanted to speak English. He was mad about that. I'm like, really? You had to push a button? The tragedy, the burden. So this organization began in 1982 or 1983, I'm sorry, I don't have my notes handy, called U.S. English, and their purpose is to make English the official language of the United States and to not allow government documents of any type to be printed in any language other than English. Also limiting immigration is a goal of theirs. Not as broadcast, but it's interesting because their 2 presidents have both been immigrants. But it's not new. During World War II, we were told, speak American. Particularly, they didn't want people speaking German, Italian, or Japanese, which seems really like a bad idea. Don't you think that during war, you'd want to know the languages of the people you're fighting? Again, not new to this time either. There was the idea of forcing literacy tests in the early 19-teens. And that was, as you can see on the left, the cartoon, essentially the best defense that we could have. And Uncle Sam in the caption says, "You're welcome in if you can climb it, if you can get over this fence." The gun turrets are fountain pens. And on the right, it's a protest, and I don't have the diction up there, but it's Abraham Lincoln saying, "My father couldn't have passed this test because he was not literate." So I'm going to read this poem to you because I'm not sure if everyone can see this. We've dug your million ditches, we've built your endless roads, we've fetched your wood and water and bent beneath your loads. We've done the lowly labor, despised by your own breed, and now you won't admit us because we can't read. Your farms are half deserted, up goes the price of bread. Your boasted education turns men to clerks instead. We bring our picks and shovels to meet your greatest need. Don't shut the gates upon us because we cannot read. That could have been written today. That's 100 years old. It could have been written today. About stealing American jobs and using up American resources. We've all heard this one. Maybe some of you have said it yourself. This one's from about 40 years ago, making that same argument. And before that, the 19th century. If you look in the background, you can see the people coming from across the sea. And here they are stealing the bread off the table of this honest family. These claims are not new. This man now out of work because of all the Chinese labor that's come in. This is not new. This one is an interesting one in particular. I like this one. As you can see, these people are telling this man who wants to come to America to stop. He can't come in. But if you look in the shadows, it's who their ancestors were. Like, remember, this was us. You should remember this was all of us at one time or another. Some people think the government's not doing enough, purposely looks the other way. Not doing enough to stop this. Even suggesting here that the INS themselves are hiring people without English skills who do not have proper paperwork. Because it's an open secret that we've done it, and we've done it for a long time. and we're going to continue to do it. You may not like that. It's going to continue to happen, though. And again, it's not new. This one goes all the way back to the 1790s. One of the first fisticuffs Congress ever had was over this very issue. It goes all the way back to the beginning. Saying the government wasn't doing enough. This was regarding the Alien Acts. There's been an effort to put a patriotic spin on this. You're a patriot if you want to prevent these types of things from happening, that is, immigration, particularly illegal immigration. So they formed this group called the Minutemen Project. But they're not new. They're voluntary border patrol, by the way, voluntary border patrol. What I will say does concern me, if I'm going to say something as both a historian and as an American citizen, is that these kind of attitudes, which were once exceptional, have become mainstream. Look at some of the people who are involved here. We're talking about older people, we're talking about middle-class people, we're talking about young people. This has become mainstream. What I also want to share with you, it has not always been mainstream. Just so you know some of the people who have been involved in this in the past, it's these guys. As you can see, the Ku Klux Klan in 2006, and the Klan Border Patrol featuring David Duke, 1977. That used to be the people who said, hey, we need to watch our borders. Well, speaking about watching borders, we're going to talk about American history. You really can't deny this one, right? I mean, we have to recognize this is the truth. It says they're building a wall because too many of us enter illegally and won't learn their language or assimilate into their culture. It's funny, but true, right? All right, so think about walls for a moment, because that's, kind of the du jour in the 21st century. You still mad about the wall he's going to build? No way, Jose, I'll get over it. Both literally and figuratively. So I'll tell you that I've never been an advocate of walls as a historian. I can tell you, walls do not work. They have never worked. The Great Wall of China has been built multiple times, if you didn't know. And actually, by the way, also deconstructed because people needed the materials for their building their own homes. That was a greater priority for them. There's Roman walls. They don't work. Germany tried walls. They didn't work. Walls don't work. So all right, I know I'm here as a historian today, but I've got a little financial advice for everybody, okay? Financial advice, all right? If we ever get a 50-foot wall, which is one thing that our current president promoted, invest in 51-foot ladders and invest in shovels, because it will happen. I can tell you, I've been studying history my whole adult life. It will happen. Oh, by the way, if you want that wall, who gonna build it? That's a reality. This may be a cartoon, but I'll show you in a moment. It's a reality. And by the way, it's not just a reality on this side of the border. I have a translation on the right of what it says in Spanish. As I see someone leaning towards it, says, we have a problem. To build an anti-immigrant wall, we need to hire 1,000 illegals. And building walls is not new. As you can see this from the 1880s. And also, by the way, if you look at it, it's immigrants who are building that wall. So I had the good fortune to find this San Antonio Express. I just happened to be in the airport that day 20 years ago. Wow. And this one particular page I took out said so much about our 21st century debate about immigration. Now, you can, of course, get access to this newspaper in your own way, but I'll just give you the headlines and a synopsis. The article on the top says people in Texas want to make it easier to deport some people, either illegal aliens or also undesirables, if you read the article, whatever undesirables means. They want to make it easier to get rid of people. The next article features President George W. Bush saying, well, what we really need to do is teach immigrants how to be American. Teach them English. That's what they need to do. They need to adapt. They need to assimilate. And the bottom article, if you happen to know what was happening in the summer of 2006 with Hurricane Katrina, the bottom article says 25% of those rebuilding New Orleans lack papers. Who was rebuilding Katrina? Immigrants. 25% of them at least, without proper paperwork. This is American history. A month before that, you may recall, some of you, the Day Without Immigrants, where at least I can tell you it happened in Madison. A lot of people decided, hey, we want to show you how important we are. We're tired of being disrespected, and decided to take one day off of work. I have a good friend, I will not name this person, who didn't know about this, not in tune with these kind of things, and went to a Mexican restaurant in Madison just to be turned away, told that there was nobody there working. And she was mad about it. How dare they not work? Like, wow, first world problems, right? First world problems. Immigrants are what make America great. That is my conclusion for years of studying history. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next speaker is Kimmy Abduli, an immigration attorney practicing in West Allis, Wisconsin. Growing up in Monroe, she was shaped by both the local community and the rich Albanian heritage of her family. She is a 2012 graduate of Marquette University Law School and brings a global perspective to her work through extensive travel, cultural insight, and hands-on legal experience. Both her practice and background uniquely position her to provide an informed overview of current United States immigration law. Kimmy.
Make sure everybody can hear me. Everyone can hear me okay? Right. Thank you for being here, everybody, and thank you, Lou. So my portion of the presentation is going to focus more on present-day immigration, following the history of it. As Mike explained, I'm going to try to bring everybody up to date on how, what is immigration law currently, how does it work, what are the realities of it, and just kind of explain some of the basic facts of.
Excuse me, could you get a little closer to the mic?
Closer? Wow, I'm in it. Is this better? Yes? Or no? Okay, I think we're good now. Immigration is a hot topic, and it gets hotter every day. Although there is quite a bit of information out there, it also seems like there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation. So I do want to address some of the issues around that, hopefully provide some information for everybody, and try to explain as best as I can some of the realities around immigration today. And if there are questions, of course, I would love questions, so hopefully we'll answer those at the end. First, I'll start, I guess, basically by just kind of explaining why, or offering my thoughts on why do people come here, which is a common question. Why do people immigrate to the U.S.? But I think a better question is, why do people leave home? I think a lot of people here are residents of Monroe, and many of you, I'm sure, have been here probably even for generations. And, you know, why don't people leave? Why have you not left Monroe and moved to a different area? And I think people don't leave because they're comfortable. They have their families, they have their communities, they have what they need. And when you have what you need, there's really no reason to leave. So it takes a lot for somebody to decide, okay, I'm gonna pick up and abandon all of that and then just go to this new place where I don't know anything, I don't know anyone, I'm gonna start from zero. And a lot of those factors have to do with people really just struggling where they are, and those struggles happen for different reasons. You know, there's wars going on, conflict is a major driving factor, poverty, economic instability, and a lot of that has to do with governments there locally just not providing opportunities for people. And so they're looking for a place where they can establish themselves and have opportunities for themselves and their families. They really just want to be able to survive for themselves and their families. Sometimes that's the US, other times it's other places in Europe. People immigrate all over the world. Sometimes that's also social marginalization. There's discrimination, there's minority groups in places that are really prevented from being able to access resources where they're at. And so those are all factors that drive people out and looking for other resources in places where they can survive. And sometimes that happens to be the US. So, why do people choose to come here? A lot of times it's because it's what's closest. It's easier to access. If people have a way to access it through lawful channels, they will do that. And I want to talk to people also about, well, how does that happen? How do people immigrate here? And it's pretty limited ways that people immigrate. There are basically 3 ways that people can immigrate to the United States. One is through you have to have a family member that can petition for you, a qualifying family member. Another way is through work, if you have an employer that can petition for you. And you have to meet a lot of different criteria in all of those categories. A third way is more humanitarian based. So it's people who may be victims of crimes who are cooperating with authorities here and helping in investigations. Sometimes there's special benefits for those individuals. There's asylees, refugees, which people may be more familiar with. And there's temporary protected status, where there may be natural disasters may be happening in a certain place, and the US has decided they're going to give that person temporary status here while that natural disaster is being resolved. But either way, you have to meet different criteria for those categories. And if you don't, there's a lot of things that can disqualify you, then you're just out of luck. But you have to have access to one of those 3 ways. If you don't have a family member who's here and can petition for you, or you don't have an employer who can petition for you, then you're kind of out of luck and you have to look for other ways. And so that pushes people to then think, okay, well, what else can I do? And like I said before, they're looking for ways to survive. So unfortunately, sometimes people have to make the decision to go to a place without permission, right? There's also, I want to be clear with a lot of, because I do represent clients who are in that community. And with everybody that I speak to, the story is, okay, well, first I didn't know really what the requirements were, and I just believed that once I got there, there would be a way for me to then apply and then sort out my status. They don't find out that there's no way to do that until they get here, but then when they're here, they're stuck here. So current immigration systems basically lock people in. And that's one of the big problems in our current immigration system and our current immigration laws. As far as being undocumented, I also want to address this issue of what it means to be undocumented, what is an illegal, what is that all about? Because there is a lot of conversation in there about illegals and criminality and all these things. With being undocumented, I guess it's kind of 2 ways of describing the same thing. You can pick whichever, I guess, descriptor you want to use. I'm not going to tell you. But either way, it's describing somebody who just does not have lawful status here in the United States. Thank you.
I'm like, where did I leave my water bottle?
Having unlawful presence in the United States is a civil infraction. It's not a criminal offense. Coming in with a visa is a lawful means of entry, right? But then if you overstay that permission, typically if you enter on something like a tourist visa or something like that, you're allowed to be here for at least, for maximum 6 months. And other visas may have more times, it just kind of depends on the visa. If you overstay that visa, it is again a civil infraction, which means that you can be subject to fines, things like that, but it's not a criminal offense. What can be a criminal offense is unlawful entry into the US. But for it to be criminal, they would have to be charged criminally. And that almost never happens. No one is ever charged with unlawful entry. So this discussion, or this conversation around like, oh, well, undocumented people or illegals or criminals and so on and so forth, I would just be very careful about understanding the differences in what it means to be a quote-unquote criminal, that someone be convicted of a criminal offense versus what may be presumed to be a criminal issue. Most of the time, it's somebody who is unlawfully present or has overstayed a visa, and that is a civil issue. As far as current policies and current politics, there's a lot of talk about rounding up criminals and so on and so forth, and the reality just doesn't match up with that. As of February of this year, there were about 68,000 people in immigration detention, and about 1.6% had criminal convictions or serious criminal convictions. Almost 74% had no criminal history whatsoever. So although the dialogue out there is that these are criminals, the reality just doesn't line up with it. Now, going back to how people can immigrate to the US, there are also some misconceptions there as well. I want to be very clear about one thing in particular, because this comes up all the time and it drives me absolutely crazy. But people think that just coming to the US and being here for a certain amount of time automatically means that you get status in the US, or that you can just go ahead and apply for citizenship, and people just choose not to do that. I can't think of any reason, logically, that somebody would choose to remain undocumented if they had the choice not to. Being undocumented means you don't have work authorization, you can't even get a driver's license. Everywhere you go, you're worried about if you're gonna get into trouble or not. I can't think of any reason why anybody would choose that if there was a way to not do that. So the reality is, again, you have to have one of these channels through which you can immigrate lawfully: family member, employer, one of these humanitarian categories, and if you don't fall into one of those, there's no way to apply. And even if you do have a family member or somebody who can petition for you, it is a lengthy process. Best case scenario, if somebody is married to a US citizen, let's say, and that citizen can petition for them. If they have entered without some sort of status or they live abroad, best case scenario, that process takes 2 years, sometimes 6 or 7 years. If it's a different family member, for people who have filed petitions for siblings, or maybe there's a US citizen who has filed for a child who is over 21. Those fall into quota categories, and depending on what country you're from, there are backlogs because the quotas don't line up with the number of people applying. People from Mexico who are citizens who may have filed, or who have family members from Mexico, I should say. US citizens who have family members from Mexico who have filed for maybe children over age 21 or siblings, the wait times for those visas are 25 years. So they started the process, but it's taking a while. And there's really no way around those quotas. And even once they get to the front of the line, there are still things that can disqualify people. One common thing is that same unlawful presence. If somebody's been here unlawfully for more than a year, they have to consular process outside of the United States, and they are automatically banned from re-entering for 10 years. So then they have to go through a whole separate process to get around that 10-year ban, which adds time to processing and costs and so on and so forth. Another thing that can come up is if you came to the US without documents, you're fleeing because of one of these conditions that just forced you to move. But let's say that you are a single mom with a small child and you couldn't leave your child behind, so you had to bring your 2-year-old with you. But now you've been in the US some time, you've met somebody here, you're married, you're going through the immigration process. When you get to the consulate to finally receive your visa, Consulates will deny the visa saying that you have smuggled an alien by bringing your child into the US. So then that creates another hurdle that people have to get around, adding time, adding costs, adding issues. Other things that can disqualify people, and these are probably more important, one is criminal history. That's not new. Criminal history has been a disqualifier for a long time. Usually serious offenses, so things like obviously murder, things that are very, very extreme, always going to be disqualifiers. But even things like possession of narcotics, going to be a problem. Burglary, robbery offenses, always going to be a problem. Gang involvement, always going to be a problem. That's not new. That has always been a disqualifier, and it doesn't matter where those crimes were committed, whether here or outside the country. Fraud and misrepresentation. If anybody has ever committed fraud on a visa application or some other application to come to the United States, that's going to be a barrier. And voting in the US has especially severe consequences or claims to US citizenship. If anybody has claimed to be a US citizen when they weren't, that is a permanent ban. There's no way around that. There's no forgiveness for it. There's nothing around it. So honestly, I almost never see it because people know that the consequences for it are severe and they just don't bother with that. As far as policies today regarding immigration, they really just don't match up with the realities of what they claim to serve. One is these visa backlogs that I just mentioned to you. The backlogs on some of these categories are so long that they are just unrealistic for people. Like they would love to apply and get in line and do all of those things, but when the line is 25 to 30 years long, they start thinking, okay, well, I need to do something else because I'm kind of starving now. I kind of need resources now. So it forces people into these very difficult situations, even though they would prefer to do it through other means. Second, and I think this doesn't get discussed enough in the public discourse, is the economic need in the US for migrant labor and immigrant labor, and the benefits that they offer into the labor force. The current system doesn't keep up with demand. So even if there is an employer that wants to file for their employee, who may be undocumented or of questionable status, let's say, they run into those same hurdles that if that person has been here unlawfully for more than a certain amount of time, they would have to consular process, return to their country of origin, and then they can't come back for 10 years. Well, and that defeats the whole purpose of the work petition because the employer would prefer that that guy come back to work the following week. So, unfortunately, immigration law as it is right now just does not address a lot of those realities and a lot of those needs. The effects of current policies really have the opposite effect of what I think is really helpful to the US. One, it's creating bans on legal immigration. So we talk a lot about wanting people to do things the right way and immigrate legally, but currently even legal immigration is being inhibited. There are bans for several countries just because you're from that country. So when you create barriers even to legal immigration, it kind of throws the whole system into the gutter because they're like, well, it doesn't work, so why bother trying to do things the legal way? What does that even mean at this point if there's really no way to do that? Secondly, it strips away legal status even from people who do have it, and a lot of times even overnight. So things like TPS, those announcements come in sometimes overnight, just saying, okay, well, for Venezuela or wherever, anybody who had TPS from this category, as of tomorrow or next week, you don't have status anymore. So then it creates people without status, even though they had it and they had gone through the proper channels to receive it. Current policies also deprioritize actual criminal activity. We're focusing so much on the low-hanging fruit and picking up people at Home Depots or nannies or whoever that people who are actually committing crimes are kind of effectively off the hook because we're distracted going after people that really aren't doing anything or causing big problems when we could be focusing those resources on actual problems. It's increasing racial profiling, which impacts U.S. citizens as well. So we've seen it in the news constantly with ICE, going through different cities, and they're not asking too deeply, like whether you're undocumented or documented or whatever. They're just kind of taking a look and racially deciding if they're going to take action or not. That means that they don't really care if you're a non-citizen or a citizen. And as we've seen, even citizens have been picked up in these events and created a lot of problems whether you have status or not. It's an attack on constitutional rights for everyone, effectively. So we really have to be careful about that. It's dangerous. Once you start tearing away at constitutional rights for any group, it makes it a problem for every group. So that does concern me, seeing kind of some of the things that are happening, and I think everybody needs to be very vigilant about that and holding the line for what our constitutional rights are and making sure that those stay intact. Because the minute we start taking it away from any group, it doesn't mean anything for the rest of us either. And we have to get past this idea, I think, of, well, that doesn't affect me, so I don't see why I should care about this. It doesn't affect you maybe now, but again, once we start tearing away at some of these things, eventually it gets to all of us, so I really think we need to be very vigilant and very careful about that. And on that note, that's all I have for you guys, so please write down your questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Our next speaker is Santos Tinoco. Santos is from Veracruz, Mexico, and moved to the United States in March 2001. He is the husband of Maribel Labato and the father of 3, Daniel, Samuel, and Santos Jr. He owns Veracruz Mexican Market and Santos Construction. So welcome, Santos.
Good afternoon. My name is Santos Tinoco, and it's an honor for me to share a little of my history with you. I came to the United States because I want a better future for my life. In 2001, my wife and I arrived with our 3-year-old son, Daniel. We came with only our passports, but we also came with hope, dreams, and clear goals to our family. One of the most important goals we had was to give our children the opportunity to get a good education and build a better life. Today, I can say with great pride that those dreams became true. My son Daniel became a mechanical engineer. My son Samuel is going to graduate in May, is an electrical engineer. And my son Santos Jr., he is a sophomore studying psychology. As a parent, seeing my children grow and succeed has been one of the greatest blessings of my life. Along the way, my family and I also worked hard to build something for our own. In 2007, we opened in a small store in town, and over the time, it grew into a supermarket. Then in 2013, I started a little company, a concrete company, which has also grown into strong business. Through those two businesses, I have also the opportunity to create jobs and help to support other families in the community. That is something that means a lot for me because I know how important work and opportunity are for the immigrant families. But the journey wasn't easy. The process of legalizing our immigration status was long and difficult. For many years, I always had that in mind. In 2004, I had the chance to work for a visa through a company where I was working, but it only lasted a few months before it expired. Then in 2008, my wife was a victim of crime. And because of that painful experience, we were able to begin our immigration status through a U visa. It was a long process with a lot of paperwork and stress. But after that many years of waiting in 2022, we finally became American citizens. It took us over 14 years to do it. That was a very emotional moment for my family and for me because it represented the end of the long chapter of fear and sacrifice. One of the biggest challenges I faced was the language. Learning English wasn't easy for me. It took me over 1 year to start to speak it. But I looked help through the library and literacy council. They gave me connected with a teacher named Lindsay Highland. She helped us so much, and over the time, she became more than a teacher. She became a true friend, and today I consider her part of our family. Another major difficulty was living without proper documentation. I can honestly describe that as part of our life as traumatic. When you do not have legal status, everything becomes harder. To get a good job, you need English and a social security number. To drive legally, you need a driver license. And to get a lighter license, you need a social security number. To get a car insurance, you need driver license. So, because of that, our life with fear every day, you feel different. You feel limited. Even something as simple as driving to work becomes a sort of stress. Not because you are trying to do something wrong, but because you are trying to survive and provide for your family. You worry about getting stopped, getting tickets, going to jail, being deported, and leaving your family alone. We also face another painful limitations like not being to open a bank account, not being able to buy a home, and living with constantly fear, losing everything you have worked for it. At the same time, I can say that the culture adjustment was not that hard. Part of me, I understood that if I want to move forward, I have to respect the laws of this country, work hard, pay my taxes, and do part as a member of this community. I have always believed in the contribution, not only for my own family, but also for the people around me. And thankfully, we are not alone. This community welcomes us, support us in many ways. It started with my teacher, who helped us with the language and also support us in the education for my older son. We also received legal advice from attorney George Vernon whenever we need it. Over the past years, I built friendships through my business and many good people and organizations that really care about helping others. I feel proud of everything my family and I have been able to accomplish. It was not easy, but with hard work, dedication, and discipline, we move forward today. I feel grateful and proud not only for what we achieved for ourselves, but also for the way we've been able to give back, support others, and create opportunities through our businesses. Thank you very much, and for your interest in learning about our histories. And I think that's all I got for you. Thank you very much.
Our last speaker is Murad Mustafa. Murad immigrated to the United States in the 1990s and is originally from Jerusalem. Married to Naila Mustafa, he is the father of 6 children and works as a chef. Murad?
Peace, shalom, and salam. Hola. My name is Murad Mustafa, and as she introduced me, I immigrated from Palestine in 1990. The reason for my immigration, obviously, was political reasons. Back then, the uprising started in 1987. Against the occupation, and for 2 years our school system was shut down, and I didn't have no choice but to look after my future, so that's the reason I immigrated to the US, so I can continue my education and build a better future for myself and eventually later on for my family. The process for my immigration wasn't as hard as compared to other immigrants, because my father was here, he was a US citizen, he immigrated to the US in the late 70s. So my process wasn't as hard as compared to other immigrants. It took a little time, almost a little over a year, but I went through, of course, the applying for the visa, getting my police record, interview with the consulate, and all those things. So it's not as easy as other people think, just because when you fill the application, you pay your fees, and you get your police record. As long as you don't have no criminal record, then they give you your visa. Well, those are the basic steps, but they still have to verify and vet everything that you are a clean person, you don't have no criminal record, and you ain't gonna come to the United States, and you're gonna contribute to the society and the economy, and so forth and so on. Once I arrived here, I didn't have a lot of challenges, because for the language, I was already taking English since 5th grade, which is they usually taught us the England or British English. It wasn't like the US English. So the transition was not really hard. And I have some of my cousins who was US citizens. They were born here, so they used to come overseas and, well, sometimes talk with each other, like simple conversation. So the main major I have problem with it is the culture. It's a big cultural difference between the US and our culture in Palestine or the Middle East in general. We are considered as a conservative society, very not a close, tight family relationship, compared to of course, the US is a little bit different. That was the most obstacle that I faced, try adjust and understanding the culture. And another reason that's even now or back then, it's almost the misconception. It's almost when you hear or you see the wrong narrative about a different nation or different society. So that's what I think that we need the most, that, understanding and being close, and try to find the truth about different nations, different societies, and what's their culture, what they believe in, and all those things. That will help us a lot getting along. And I first arrived in Chicago, then I moved to Rochelle, Illinois, the Rockford area. Then eventually I came to Monroe, and I lived for almost 5 years in Monroe before I got married and brought my wife here. And for so many years, even the best customer who know me, they never know that I was a Middle Eastern background. Most of them, they thought I was like European, to be exact, East European, because of my accent. Because as you see, I used to have a red head, not anymore. But I still have the red beard and mustache. So a lot of them, they never thought when I told them that, I'm from Jerusalem, they're like, huh? You sure? Like, yeah. And I used to joke with them sometimes. I was like, what? They would ask me where I'm from. I would say, Jesus, my cousin. And they'd be like, are you from Rome? I'm like, I said, Jesus, my cousin. You told me I'm from Rome? No. Like, when the last time you been in a church? They're like, oh, I don't know, since I was a teenager. I'm like, well, Jesus is from Bethlehem, and I'm from Jerusalem. See, he's my cousin. So it's Aladdin and the Lion King. The Lion King, Mufasa, I'm Mustafa. We are second cousins. Another thing for the other, the rest of my fellow other immigrant, that again, I feel so frustrated when I hear, other people, especially now, talking mostly about, the Hispanic illegal immigrant, because maybe they are the majority. I'm sure there are African, Middle Eastern, Chinese, whatever, all other illegal immigrants too, who cross the border somehow or another. But from my experience with them, and I worked with them, and obviously I am I came as an immigrant, and I'm a US citizen, It really hurt me. It's like, those people, they work really, really hard, and they contribute to the economy and to the society. And why will people treat them this way and look at them this way? And that is not right, because I even tell you from my experience in Monroe, up to like year 2000, 2001, there were probably 50 Hispanic individuals in the community, And look at them right now, they're probably 200-300 families. And they all working hard. And I use, it's funny when you work in a restaurant, if you need the news about any town, you just go to the restaurant and you listen to the gossip between the waitresses and the customer, and you can get a lot of information about that town. So at one point, the Hispanic community, they decide they want to do a celebration for the Cinco Mayo, whatever, their national thing. And one of my best customers, without mentioning names, they were at that time elder men and women in the city council, and they were really very mad about it. And they're like, this is a Swiss town, and with this and that, why we need to do Cinco Mayo? I'm like, why would why you are against it? Why you people, they are just like anybody you're a Swiss, okay, you probably got lucky that your grandfather or your father came from Switzerland and you got to be born here. So what's the difference between you and him, or between you and me? And I said, even that's not right. And sometimes people can be hypocrites, like she criticizes, she's upset. At the same time, her daughter's boyfriend, he's Hispanic. I'm like, it's okay that he's but now overall, I think the Monroe community, I will say they are very hospitable to immigrant. I myself, later on, my wife and my kids, unfortunately, they could not attend. My little one is not feeling good. We did not experience any racism or bad experience with the community, even though I can tell from the experience when you live for so many years, in the same community. We lived here almost 22 to 25 years. There are some people you can see through their eye, when they give you the eye when you walk down the aisle in the shopping, grocery store, or in the bank, or whatever. But as I said, me and my family will never experience any bad because being an immigrant. Even though, as I said, I visited my wife, she came here, she actually went to high school, and she finished her senior year. And she was the first one to make a record that she was married in the high school, and she was pregnant in the high school legally and officially. And they used to call me, her legal guardian / husband when I used to go to her parent meeting. But when 9/11 happened, that's one thing what make me decide to stay here in town and raise my family. First, the sheriff, the chief of police station called me up and he said, if anybody bother you or bother your wife, okay, just, call us and we'll take care of it. And the second day, the principal at the time of the high school, the same thing. He called me up because my wife, as I said, she was her first year, her English wasn't the best, so they told me to tell her and make it clear to my wife, if any of the student or anybody, but especially the student, bother her or, give her bad comments about her discard for being a Muslim after 9/11, that they will take care of it. And again, thanks God, that she never get bothered, or neither myself too. So I visit in every community. There are people who tend to be maybe the way they were brought up. They do not like immigrant, but again, we all immigrant. We all came to the, in the same boat. Somebody came from Europe early on in the 60s, 20s, 30s, 1800. Some of us, like us Middle Eastern, we started probably, coming to the U.S. in the late 60s, 70s, up to now. Uh, the last thing I want to say that those kind of discussion we have, okay, we should have it like a larger scale with like the whole town, like the high school and the city hall or whatever it take to inform the people and to talk about, that issue. In the immigration, I think I learned because I did so many cases, my mother, my brothers, my sister, my wife, my nephews. It's a very, very hard, and you gotta really stay on top of it because any mistake you will do, they will delay your papers for months, or if it's not years. So whoever's gotta deal with them, you gotta be really, really careful and record everything and keep file of all the documents you deal with them, because once you do a little mistake, or if they ask you for one little piece of paper or a little information, provide them with them, then your case is deleted for like 6 months to 1 year. Thank you very much, and I am glad that I came and I talked to you. Thank you.
We're going to start with some questions for Mike. When did the immigration policy change? In the 1960s and 1970s, migrant workers were allowed to harvest crops, etc., and go back to Mexico. Now it doesn't seem to be happening. Why is that the case?
Okay, so I'm not sure about that date, but when we study migration from Mexico to the United States, there's 4 general periods, and I think as time goes on, we're going to define that more so. The first one is 1849 to 1923. That's when Texas, California, and 10 other states become part of the United States. Up until 1923, because in 1924 we passed an immigration law that really changes America's attitudes towards immigration. 1924, then I'll say roughly to 1963. During World War II, well, let me a little bit. During the Great Depression, I mentioned this earlier about there being out-migration. There were American citizens, usually we're talking about children of migrants, who were given welfare on the condition that they leave the United States. So we actually had American citizens, in order to access welfare, had to leave the country. In 1942, the United States is involved in World War II, and we started a program, a joint program with the Mexican government called the Bracero program. It's just what it says, Bracero worker. And it was to bring workers to fulfill jobs that were needed to help the war effort or that were vacated by people who were supporting the war effort in other ways. In the first year, it was just 4,000 people, so it really was an experiment. It was over 100,000 by 1945, and when the war ended, both countries recognized the great value of this program, and they continued it. And it would bring up to 400,000 people a year to work temporarily. If I remember, the wage caps in the 1940s at least were 50 cents an hour with a maximum of $500 a year that could be earned. Now this is when I tell this to people that are oftentimes shocked that in that era, the border was guarded by both the United States government and the Mexican government. The Mexican government wanted to make sure that all their workers were protected, they were not exploited, and that they could collect the tax dollars when they came back. Okay? When the Bracero program was ended in 1964, it also ended any incentive for the Mexican government to guard the border. So that's really when that changes quite a bit what happens. In fact, Mexico is actually encouraged to have people cross the border, whether it's illegal or not, because the Mexican population tripled over a 50-year period, which is almost unheard of anywhere in the world. And so people coming to the United States and then coming back to Mexico, for one thing is they gave them job training, it gave them American dollars in the Mexican economy, and also alleviated a lot of potential social problems that would be happening in overcrowding in Mexican cities. So it was American policy that really disincentivized the Mexican government to cooperate with the American government in guarding the border. So the dates that you gave me in the 70s, I'm not sure if what I just said works with that. Okay, you're nodding here, yes, okay.
I think that's where we're going.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. as a former Spanish teacher, that Bracero program was very interesting, for sure. So here's one for you, Mike. You say America as a country. I think the correct thing to say is that America is a continent divided in 3 parts: South America, Central America, and North America. It's a really long statement.
Absolutely correct. It's
Yeah.
United States is what I meant when I said America.
And the history, yeah. I'll just read the whole question, and we'll address it then. And the history of the United States of America has something older. When you said that someday perhaps there will only be an American, where did you leave the people from Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and other countries that also are from the American continent? Aren't they Americans?
Okay, the answer is yes, they are Americans, and I don't think I meant to use any kind of exclusive language in that respect. I think I was merely repeating things that were on the slides. I was not trying to voice any type of opinion on that, just so you're clear. I think we're all Americans here. Yeah.
And I actually want to jump in as a Spanish teacher, because when we named this presentation, Immigration in America, Past and Present, it's really immigration in the United States of America, past and present. And I chose to say that simply because as I travel around the world in other countries, the default is to say America and think of the United States. But thank you for pointing out that America is a continent, not a country. So, point well taken. And then the last history professor question that we have is, how can everyday people who may not know much about history fight back against the revisionist historical ideas surrounding not just immigration, but also the Holocaust, the Civil War, and Reconstruction?
Okay, so that term means something different to historians, that revisionist history. It means something different than what I think it's being used now. And I'm not sure the person who asked the question, are you asking about efforts to blot out the truth, like about the Holocaust and those kind of things? Yeah. You know what? Information is the way you do it, right? Education is the key. Like, I guess not having me here in particular, but having professors come and talk to people is, you know, I think is very useful. Look, I'm paid by you as taxpayers. I didn't come here to lie to you. All right, I'm not paid to lie. I'm paid to tell you the truth, and I'm telling you the truth best that I know how. And I can tell you that's probably true for all of my colleagues that I know would do the same thing. So I always, as an educator, I always think education is the key.
These next questions relate primarily to our current immigrant experience. Murad, why did you choose to come to this country rather than England or a European country that may have been closer to home?
As I said, probably the main reason because my father was here, and it was much easier for me to immigrate because he's here and he can do the paper for me. And even if he, let's say hypothetically he was illegally here, that will be even a lot still easier for me because I will find somebody related to me in close relation that he will be able to help me out to get and settle. Visiting, going to Europe, which is like you said, it's so closer. I don't have no family member, even though some of our people, you know, they emigrate there because they have their family member, or they have some, because there's another, I mean, we as a Palestinian, we have a special situation when it comes to the immigration process compared to the rest of the Middle Eastern, like Jordan or Syria or whatever, but at least back then. Now I think different. So they were like a humanitarian visa or some kind of like what they call the lottery visa. Sometimes people, they were lucky to go through with that. But the main reason for me, as I said, because my father. That's the reason I immigrated to the U.S.
I just want to jump in and ask Kimmy, because I believe your family immigrated to several different countries. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. Okay, so I've totally got it wrong, but you have relatives in Switzerland, right?
I have relatives in other places, but they immigrated separately and actually later. So my dad immigrated here in the 70s, and the details of it is that, the short story is that it was through asylum effectively at the time, because Yugoslavia was under communism, and so there was a whole communist thing happening there. And so he found his way here and sought asylum. The process in 1974, or whenever he got here, was very different compared to what it is today. And so, yes, he went through the process and was here, and then through him, eventually he got residency and citizenship, and then once he was a citizen, he was able to petition for me and my mom. And so we just moved here directly. But even when we moved here, the process took, I think start to finish was like 4 or 5 months, and barely, I don't know, $50 or something. I think, I remember I searched my own records just to see what was in there, and found these things, and it just blew my mind, because now it's hundreds of dollars, sometimes even thousands, and like I said, can take best case scenario up to 2 years. So it's just not the same process anymore.
Okay, question for Santos. Murad has spoken about coming here and feeling very welcomed. Did you feel as welcomed when you first arrived in Monroe, and how did you choose Monroe as your landing place?
Okay. It wasn't the first stop in Monroe. Actually, the first stop was in Galena, Illinois, because we had family there. Unfortunately, for the company I was working for, they have to shut down. And I found a job in Monroe, and I was driving back and forward over 6 months, but it was very hard, because I was getting into work around 5 o'clock in the morning and ending in the job around 5 o'clock in the evening. So plus hour and a quarter to drive back and forward. So sometimes I was sleeping, driving, on the way back to home. So I decided to move around September in 2001. And since then, we are here, and we love Monroe. That's why we stay here.
Thank you. And this last question in this category is really for anyone. Does not learning English limit an individual's social, political, and economic future? Does not learning English affect your social, economic future?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's for everyone.
Yes,
Anyone
yes,
to this. It doesn't have-
definitely it was affected my my goals in the United States. I knew I have to learn English because learning English I think is the best investment you can do in the country. Is what I told everybody. If you don't have the language, you can be a hard worker, you can be a good person, but you're not going to do it. So you need 3 things in this country to make it, to be successful. Language, be a hard worker, and be a good person. That's all you need to make your goals true in this country.
And again, I have to jump in, because I think most of us understand that it is not easy to learn a second language. And especially when you are new to a place, when you don't know anyone, when you are working all of those hours and you don't have the time or the energy. So again, the Literacy Council is doing wonderful work to support people, and I know there are many people who want to and trying to, but it doesn't happen in one day. So I'm going to go to, are these Kimmy? These are. Kimmy, what is your caseload in the Milwaukee area?
Like number-wise?
Yeah, just kind of give us a feeling for what your days are like.
Or what kinds of cases, you mean? Or numbers?
Numbers and kinds.
Okay. Numbers, honestly, I don't know, but it's probably at least like a couple of hundred, maybe more. But they're at various stages. Because I do have cases that move quickly, and then I also have some that end up in these backlogs and so they're filed, but they're just kind of waiting, right? So it may seem like a large number, but they're kind of at different parts of the process. And then the case types that I deal with, I focus primarily on family immigration, so people who are immigrating through a family member or somebody who's already a permanent resident and can apply for citizenship. And then also a lot of the humanitarian-based cases, so things like the U visas or visas for victims of trafficking, immigration status for people who are victims of domestic violence, some refugee and asylum cases, but it depends on the case, because those are a whole different animal that I won't get into because we'll be here really until tomorrow. But so it's just kind of a wide array of things, but primarily in those two buckets.
Thank you. I think this might be a Kimmy question. How can immigrants legally drive to an immigration appointment if they cannot get a driver's license? Seems like a catch-22 for these immigrants.
It absolutely is. And as far as my clientele goes, to the extent that anybody really has a quote-unquote criminal history, it's driving without a license is like the main thing, because there's just no way around it. We don't have really a strong public transportation infrastructure here, so it's not like they can just take the metro or take the bus to wherever they need to get to. Everything requires driving. So people are just taking a risk with that. They just kind of have to do a cost-benefit analysis, and sometimes they're forced into this situation because of the circumstances.
And I don't know if people are aware, but this has not always been the case in Wisconsin. This law was passed, I can't really say, but it used to be that, yes, you could get a driver's license, which solves so many problems, insurance, even understanding traffic laws and so forth. And I think Jenna Jacobson, who, thank you for coming, might want to talk a little bit about what you are trying to do in the legislation. Do you want to address that?
Well, and I also, before we move into that real quickly, I also just want to point out to that, it's also revenue. Like, driver's licenses in the state are not free. What are they, like $40-some now? I should know this because I just renewed, but forgive me. And that's per person. So, it would just be added revenue to the state if people were allowed to apply and get a driver's license. So.
That'd be cool. But I know that this has been addressed, and I don't know if you want to comment a little bit?
Do you want me to stay back here? Hi, everyone. State Representative Jenna Jacobson. Thank you for putting this on. So Lisa is correct. It was in the folks were able to get licensure until the early 2000s when the state took that away. They used the excuse of the eventual transition to a real ID as the reason why, is my understanding. And we have been trying in the state legislature since then to reinstate that ability because, as was stated, it makes everybody safer. Folks know the laws, they can get insurance, so should there be something that happens, you have coverage. And then, as was discussed, if you need to going to get groceries, taking care of your everyday needs, or traveling to an immigration appointment, you're not having that fear of getting pulled over and then having a fine of a few $100s that you now have to cover in addition to everything else. So that is an ongoing project that we're trying to get through the legislature. The idea has bipartisan support. It's just a matter of getting the legislative leadership that is currently there on board, I would say. So.
Thank you. By the way, in other states, I believe Illinois, Minnesota, Iowa? I don't know, but anyway, I've given you 2 states where, yes, you can get a driver's license if you are undocumented.
In the interest of time, I'm going to combine some questions, and these more about what we can do going forward. That there's currently, however you want to describe it, a crisis would be one word, that the current status appears to be broken, and how can we get past that? How can we get ahead of it? How do we overcome the current political atmosphere? And as individuals who live in a small community, how can we help?
Wow, okay. Well, a couple of things, I guess, I would just want to point out. You know, this was actually stated earlier by our immigrant stories here, but really just, I think, get to know people. And if you know someone who's from a different country or speaks with an accent or whatever, be curious. Like, just ask them and try to learn from them. Try to learn their story, their background, their history, so on and so forth. And you really come to find out once you speak to people that you have a lot more in common than you have differences. Find out where their events are. You know, is there going to be a party somewhere? If there's a Cinco de Mayo, don't worry about why we're having it. Just go, have a good time. Like, I don't understand why we're stressed about why there's a Cinco de Mayo. There's food and music. What is there to be upset about? But in so doing, you learn more about, just people and the humanity that we all ultimately share versus really just getting caught up in, well, they're different, where they sound different, where they look different. Because at the end of the day, how much does that really matter, or why does it matter? So I would just encourage people to just try to connect with people when they do have those opportunities to do so and try to learn from that and gain from that. I do think that that's actually one of the biggest benefits to the U.S., is that everybody is here. You have an opportunity to learn about so many people from so many different places all right here without having to travel to all those different countries. And that's one of the strengths here, and I think people really miss out on that opportunity by not taking advantage of those moments. And again, come at it from an angle of learning, because if people feel safe, that you're not coming in with judgment, that sort of a thing, they're very welcoming and opening and want to be a part of that connection. So take advantage of that. And I already forgot the first question. Sorry.
I think we're asking, how can we fix the laws?
How do we fix the system?
The laws,
How do we fix the
yes.
system?
Good luck. But really, we really need immigration reform, okay? The current system and the current laws as they are may have served whatever they were trying to serve in, the last time they were changed was 1997. So maybe we were in a place that these laws made sense in at that time, but they no longer fit what we need and where we're at now, and we need reform to address the realities of the situation. Look at our labor markets, look at our humanitarian situation, whatever it may be. Take a look at the reality of our society right now and try to figure out where immigration policy and immigration law can really be fixed to address those needs. It's not, no one's looking for handouts. We understand that it's a process. People have to go through a process, be vetted, so on and so forth. That's fine. No one has an issue with that. But the U.S. does have a need for immigrants, and we have to take a look at that and really try to figure out where we can fix the laws so that they make sense and allow people to do it the quote-unquote right way.
And those are the basic questions.
Did anyone else want to add anything? Anybody?
Yeah, any final words from the panelists?
One thing I want to finish. One thing I want to say before we go is back in 2004 when I started working with a concrete company for somebody else, I have achieved a crew who I was working with. It was only 3 persons. Actually, in the whole company, only was Anglo people. It was only me, the Hispanic person, working with them. And then he was the in charge of the crew. And then after 1 year, I was working along with him. He said, "I don't like Hispanics, but I like you, Santos. I like you too much." That's what he says after we come along working together. So if you give us an opportunity to be here and share with you, so.
One heart at a time.
Yes, thank you.
Now, I want to share with you one more experience. Again, it's not just us immigrants who come and we have a hard time because of our native language. We could not speak in English. Sometimes even the people here that they need to be educated in knowing what they are doing, where they're doing their job. So probably 10 years ago, to be exact, I went to help a friend down in Independence, Iowa. Independence, Iowa. So he have his daughter and son-in-law, they came from overseas. Obviously, his daughter is a U.S. citizen, and she have a U.S. passport, and his son, he have a whatever Macedonian passport, but he have the visa. So after they get here, I went there to make an ID for both of them, okay? So I went there, we filled the papers and everything else, and the lady there, she was like probably in her late 60s, working, and I give her, you know, the mail, the husband's paper. She did everything, you know, and now do the wife. And she looked at me, she's like, where is her visa? I'm like, why she need a visa, man? She's like, I need a visa just like her husband's visa. Why there's no visa in her passport? And I'm like, why she would need a visa? She's a U.S. citizen. And she's like, how do you prove she's a U.S. citizen? I said, ma'am, you are looking at U.S. passport. What more of a proof you want? And she looked again, she's like, oh, well, we all make mistakes. I'm like, okay, but why you were upset? She was like really getting upset, like, you know, almost yelling at me in the, you know, the gears, like, I need to prove that you are a U.S. citizen. And where are your visa? So that was, you know, like, then later on, a young woman, she jumped in, she's like, you know, I am sorry, and she tried to apologize. She's like, we've been doing in this office for almost 20 years. This is the first immigrant that we need to deal with. I'm like, okay, I understand when you are or you do not know how the visa look like or a foreigner passport, but it's handed to you a U.S. passport, and you keep insisting you want a visa for a U.S. citizen. So those one of the things, you know, funny things that, or the experience, that is not always they blame the immigrant that didn't know the right or didn't know the rules or they did not. Another thing too, like before I got my citizenship, which I got back in '94, when everybody, and even after I got, when people look at me and they're like, you're a foreigner, go back to your country. You know, I used to get mad, but once I studied and I learned, I got my U.S. citizenship, I start like, you know, general, like, I'm more American than you are, because at least I paid for it. I know the government, I know the history about it, and I can debate with you. Who knows about the U.S. government and history, you or me? And actually, I did that challenge when I went to Black Hawk when I was going for my chef diploma. You know, a couple of people, they challenged me, like, you know, I can tell they were not big fan of immigrant. So we start back and forth. That was at the time of the Iraqi war thing. And I'm like, okay, let's see who's more American, me or you, okay? And the last thing about knowing each other, people, I think, like Kimmy said, you know, you have any opportunity where it's like gathering for any immigrants, you know, being Chinese, Spanish, Middle Eastern, you should go and attend it. And usually those people, they are more welcoming for you to come in and join them with their celebration, whatever they are celebrating with, you know. And always have the curiosity, because we as a human, we have like the tendency to be scared from unknown, you know. That's normal to all of us. But you need to break that and, you know, slowly, you know, start asking a question. You know, if you have a neighbor who's a migrant, you know, okay, say hello to him. One day invite him for a coffee, or he will invite you for a coffee. And you start talking, and this is how you get to know him, and he will know you. All right?
I want to thank all of our speakers for so generously giving their thoughts and ideas and experiences. I think that the last story kind of underscores what Mike had said about the need for education. But it's not just the education of the mind, is it? It's the education of our heart, of our morals. It's all of that. And that's why you're here tonight. And that should make us happy. So our evening is concluded. I want to thank you for coming here tonight, and we have all sorts of refreshments. Please, please come and help us eat in Fellowship Hall, and thank you again. We don't know what to do with this either.